As you know, my name is David Wynn Miller, but I punctuate my name. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, all punctuated the name same as I did. They were all 34-degree Master Masons. Now, I don't know if there's any Masons in the crowd, but I am a 92nd degree Mason. I know you've been taught that Masonry goes to 33 and 34 degrees for Grand Masters. The reason I'm a 92nd degree Mason is because in 1988 I broke the math interface in all 5,000 languages, proving that language is a linear equation in algebra. This hasn't been done in 8,500 years of written language. When I did so, I was able to unlock the 2/3 of all the words missing from all languages in the world, and I can write any sentence in any language, frontwards and backwards, with the same meaning. Once this was discovered, it completely, 48 hours after I published on the internet, I had 2 Secret Service agents from Washington at my front door going, "Do you realize what you've done? You've just disqualified every treaty, trust, and contract in 8,500 years on planet Earth." I says, "Well," he says, "who did you tell?" I says, "Everyone." I says, "I sent out 100 videos, 20 hours long, including a 100-page report on the entire studies to all nations of the United Nations and over 100 TV and news agencies around the United States. And I fielded over 100,000 questions at seminars, and I haven't missed any. So you cook up the best question you can think of, and I'll tell you the facts. I'll tell you the facts going all the way back 8,500 years and how it's going to influence all the cross-referencing with it. People go like, "That's impossible. You can't know that kind of information." This is, ask me the question. We'll find out. Now, I did a seminar in Bellingham, Washington. I had 86 people in the audience, and I told everyone, I says, "I'm going to answer all your questions today." And one gentleman on the left, on my right side here, he goes, stands up. He was about 75 years old. He says, "That's a pretty bold statement." He says, "You don't know what kind of questions we're going to ask, so how can you say you know all of our answers?" I said, "Tell you what, you be the official question counter." I says, "And you count how many questions I'm going to answer in the next 2 days." So he went ahead and he counted, and at the end of 5 o'clock on Sunday, he stands up and he says, "Well, that was impressive. You answered 125 questions successfully, including history, and I agreed with every answer you gave. Now, how many of you know about the object in Greenland?" A couple of you, okay. Well, for those of you that don't know, there is a spacecraft that has melted out of the ice in Greenland. As you know, the North Pole has melted completely. You can go from London to Moscow or to Russia by going over the North Pole now. All the ice cap is gone. The last place that has ice on it was Greenland. Greenland had a 18,000-foot ice cap on it. Well, the spacecraft that is anchored in the center of Greenland created the last ice age 50,000 years ago. It's a weather machine. It's 55 miles wide, 300 miles long, and 2 miles high. The people that lived in it were called the Mois. If you draw a straight line from the spacecraft to the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., through the Yucatan Peninsula Great Pyramid at Mitsubishi, and ends up on Easter Island where the Mois have been dug out of this dirt. The heads on Easter Island, well, 2 years ago they finally went ahead and they excavated, and they're all 65 to 85-foot people, full-body carvings. And these were the people that lived in the spacecraft that was uncovered that's melting out of the ice in Greenland. So when you think we've been alone, these people have been up there for 50,000 years. The spacecraft is still active after 50,000 years. It has a 200-mile dampening field where no electrons can flow into it. In 1947, a B-52 bomber flew into that pattern, into the dampening field, when trying to fly between Maine and London. As a result of that, they lost power and crashed in Greenland. As they sent in rescue B-52 bombers to rescue them, they hit that same dampening field, but they veered off. They just ricocheted off of it. And by testing, trying to get to these guys, they were able to bring a circumference and find out that there was an object 200 miles to the center of this field. On the southwest corner of Greenland, there is a small community. It's the only community on the island of Greenland. That community is a military post, CIA, that uses a compressed air generator to operate diesel engines to run a Caterpillar to run back and forth to 200 miles from the base to the object in Greenland. A lot of our technology comes from the reverse engineering out of the spacecraft. It is still functional and is still in operation. So it's pretty important what this thing is. All the nations worldwide are up there with the United Nations, and they're all acting, working together. Point is that we're not alone out here in this universe. The reason I bring this up is, if no one ever went to war over a math problem amongst humans, don't you think it would also be logical that we wouldn't go to war with E.T. when he shows up? And if E.T. does show up, what are we going to do? Babble? Start a war between another planet because of miscommunications? No, we need a communication base that is so mathematically certified, both frontwards and backwards, that when we say something, it means exactly what we say, so that there is no subjective interpretation, translation. So it's very important for us to be correct 100% of the time when we're dealing with ET. Otherwise, they're going to throw a rock at us like they did 375 million years ago at the Yucatan Peninsula and get rid of the dinosaurs, which you all know about. So we don't want to have rocks thrown at us. So the planet, all the governments of the planet are looking at this math interface as being a correct way to communicate, stop wars on planet Earth, as well as communicate with ET when they show up. And as many of you who do the research and get on the internet know that there's probably a lot of different ETs already influencing this planet with all of our little toys that we have, our cell phones and computers and TVs. So it is relevant. It is relevant. He says, I got two more questions. He says, who is God? He says, well, that's probably the easiest question I've been asked since I started this. Now, remember I said at the beginning of this seminar, what is a thought? Hold a thought in your hand. A thought is not of this world. Okay, everyone in this room studies this word God. Matter of fact, we have 5,000 different sounds of words for the word God. It's a very unique word. Now, you also, when you study God, you also study the devil, what evil is. So it's called perspective. You have to know what's good and you have to know what's bad. So you have an understanding of what choice is. Now, because you have choice, you can choose to be a good person or a bad person. Now, everyone in this room, you will read different books at different ages, at different times. You will talk to different people, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your ministers at the school, at the church, teachers. And all through life, you accumulate information. The end result is we all have 1,000 separate definitions that we have accumulated to answer one word. So, and that word, God, because you all have 1,000 different sources of research to answer that one word, now says that God has created man's image. Image, imagination, creation, art. So each one of you formulates your own definition based on your own subjective interpretation of your own educational capacity, your own IQ. IQ is based on the amount of percentage of your brain activity that you use for thinking. To come to a conclusion, to stand in front of a mirror, look at yourself and say, I know who God is, based on these definitions. And no one, I don't care who you are, can tell you who your God is because they weren't there for your 1,000 points of study. And everyone in this room has a different 1,000 points of study and answer the same word. And you also have 1,000 points of study to answer the bad things. What is evil? What is wrong? What is a lie? It's called perspective. So we all choose to be good. We all choose to be correct. And we all choose to stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself and say, I know who God is. And I believe in that person. Or I believe in that entity. And that's the definition of what who God was. But then what they wanted me to do was syntax, their electronics program. So I took a 1,800-word patent on a new electronics cell phone. The new cell phone is transparent aluminum, 3 by 5 inch screen, 3D holographic. It has a 200 lumen video projector. And then when you set it down, it has pop-up, AirTouch keyboard, just like Minority Report. Really state-of-the-art stuff. And it's not a 4 gigabyte, it's 1 terabyte. We're talking 128 gigs on a 20 nano chip to a terabyte for efficiency, memory. The 200 lumen is in high resolution Blu-ray, and it puts out a 4-foot screen. Set it down next to your computer, it talks to your computer, transfers all the information from your computer into the cell phone and puts it up on a 4-foot screen. It also has a 2-inch by 2-inch transducer, it's called a subspace transducer. It's a microphone, it's a speaker, and it's also an antenna. Has a 38-mile range, can operate 100 feet underground, underwater, can read minerals up to 100 feet underground because it works in subspace. Now think of the hydrogen atom. You have an electron and you have a proton. This goes into space between the electron and the proton. As you know, all objects that we touch are held together by atoms. Atoms run on electromagnetics. But this operates in the space between the atoms and the electrons in subspace. Therefore, it can transmit 38 miles between towers and also operates underground. So this is the next stealth technology. That doesn't exist anymore with this new technology. The military's had this for 12 years and has been declassified because all the other militaries in the world now have it, so they're going to make it available to the public. So this is going to be the new cell phones coming out. Even though your Galaxy 3 might be pretty special at the cell phone store, this next generation cell phone is going to be something else. It's Star Trek material. The biggest new thing that's coming on the market is the word lithium. Lithium makes for the batteries. Now, China currently controls 80% of the lithium on planet Earth. 20%, the other 20% was known to be in Mount Weld in Australia, better known as the Linus mine. It's a 1 cubic mile of lithium that they've uncovered. Colombia, 3 years ago, somebody wanted to find out how big the salt flats were. So they drilled down 15 meters into the salt. And they found a 25 square mile lithium, a pure lithium bed of lithium. Enough lithium for the next 200 years to build about 600 billion automobile batteries. Yeah. So now if you add thorium to lithium, you can get 8 times more power out of the same size battery. Think of an ordinary car battery made out of lithium thorium that would have the power to drive a car 400 miles with a 4-minute recharge. That's all. Now, that's technology. I know battery technology. I built my first perpetual motion motor when I was 16 years old, my first laser beam when I was 12. I've been on the cutting edge of weird, futuristic stuff ever since I was a little kid. And if you do enough research on me, you're going to find out that I was taken when I was 8 years old. I went into a UFO for 3.5 hours. They put a machine on top of my head. And whatever they did to me, they put all this information into my head. And why I've been able to build this program without any interruptions from anybody for the last